Hello and welcome to another video tutorial. Today we're going to have a look at Fog, a imaging server which allows us to add users. We can also image a computer. So for example, this one that I'm working on, we can image that and push it out to deployment using the WDS server. It's also a server which tells us the amount of bandwidth that's being used, and also how long the server has been in operation, as well as what resources are being used on the server. So I will show you Fog, where to get it, and I will also show you how to install the operating system which is needed for Fog, which in this case is Linux Ubuntu. So the actual software that I'm going to install is Ubuntu for now. So to get Ubuntu, what I recommend is going to Start, Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, Firefox, or whichever browser you have. I'm just going to wait for it. Oh no, it's up. Okay, right, I'm going to bring that over here. And just type in Ubuntu into Google. Okay, the latest version is 12.04. That's the version I will be using. Then go to download, and then from here you want to download the image. So in this case the one that I'll be using is Ubuntu server. However, there are some tutorials on YouTube which use the Ubuntu desktop version. Both are perfectly fine, but for this tutorial I'm going to be using the Ubuntu server. I will click on that. And then you have two versions, 32-bit and 64-bit. 32-bit, the definition that I like to see it is 2 to the 32, which is roughly translated into computing terms as 4 gigs, which is the theoretical limit in which the computer can take, is a way of putting it. So if you have a 32-bit system, the maximum amount of RAM that your computer can take is 32-bit. Not 32 bits, I mean 4 gigs. That's it. I can run through the maths if anybody requests it. It's a little bit complex, but I'm pretty sure I can explain it. It's not too bad. It's based on logarithmic calculations. And there we go. 64-bit is base 2 to the 64. That's what I was supposed to say. So 32-bit, I'm just going to clarify my 32-bit just now, is base 2 to the 32. 64-bit is base 2 to the 64, and that gives us a really big number, going up to I think it's a couple of terabytes. However, the maximum amount of RAM that I've been told a 64-bit system can take at the current moment is roughly around 128 GB, but I will have to double check on that because I checked on that a while back, so I'm guessing they've probably just upgraded it now. So what you do then is just click on Start Download, and as you can see, Ubuntu will start downloading. The install itself shouldn't take too long, depending on how much traffic there is. But I already have this image, so I'm going to cancel it, and I'm going to go back to the deployment server that I have. And well, the next part is just to make the virtual machine, which is quite easy. I'm going to run through it very quickly. However, if you want a more detailed explanation, please check my video in which I have configured a virtual machine. I will leave a link in this video so that way it's easier to get to. Next. And I'm going to call this Linux Ubuntu x64.1. Next, RAM allocation, I'll give it about 6 gigs. Hard disk. Yep. Let's call this. I don't need very much, so 19 gig. Okay, now that I've loaded the Ubuntu disk, as you can see, the interface has changed. So we have a different interface here, which we're not familiar with at the moment. If you've been following my tutorials, you might be familiar with it because other YouTubers have covered Fog installation before. However, this is my own way of doing it, so I prefer to go from ground up and then show you basically what has been done. Like just beside me just now, I have a whole lot of notes just explaining what I've done to install it. So yeah, so this part's quite easy. Just click English, install Ubuntu server, English because I'm in England, so United Kingdom. Set keyboard layout, no. What is this? Keyboard layout, English, English UK. Just wait for it to just load up the contents. In this tutorial, I will be using server 2008 as a DHCP and DNS server, and I'll show you how to configure that as well. Okay, so I'm going to configure the hostname of the Ubuntu server, so I'm just going to call it Ubuntu from now. The user account, I'm going to call that. Password, I'm going to call it test. Test. Use weak password, yeah, because this is only a test server. Encrypt your home directory, nope. Correct time zone, that works better if you have the internet on. So if you have an active internet connection, I'd recommend plugging it in. I should have mentioned that at the start, but do plug your internet in if you're going to install a Linux box. It works a hell of a lot better. So is this the correct time zone? Yes. Use entire disk and set up VLM. Yep. That was just 2 enters. Write the changes to disk and configure the VLM. Yes. Amount of land guided partition. That's fine. Continue. Write the changes to disk. Yes. Now I'll install the base operating system, and we will be presented with a command line text, which is just basically Linux's own text command prompt for installing like different packages and updates and different things, because Linux is awesome. We don't need a proxy, but if you have a proxy, then you can put the username, password, host information as well as port number into the HTTP proxy information tab, which is also listed above. So that's the syntax that you need to use. And I'm not using a HTTP proxy, so I'm going to click continue. Okay, so now it's installing the selected packages, which was really quick. So do we want to configure updates on this system? I personally do, so I just click install security updates automatically, and it will do its job. And for this part, what I usually select is manual package installation. I click that and then enter. Now it's asking whether or not we need to install the Grub bootloader. So the Grub bootloader is a loader which allows us to see multiple operating systems in the system. So like, for example, you might have Linux and Windows, for example, and using Grub you can find out whether or not using Grub you can boot into whichever operating system you require. But Grub is mainly used for Linux. It's like the Linux equivalent of the Windows bootloader. You'll see what it looks like in a minute. So for now, I'm going to click yes, as this is only a single operating system, so we can have Grub on here. Okay, so it's saying that the installation has been completed, and we have to remove any media that we need in the system. On a virtual machine, you don't necessarily need to do this. This step isn't really required. It does it for you automatically. So I'm going to click continue. And it's going to boot up into the main operating system. See, this was the bootloader that I was talking about. It's very quick, only 3 seconds before it boots up into the main operating system, as it's doing so now. And it's just running through. See, it's just run through straight through its cycle, and has brought me to the Ubuntu login screen. So I'm going to type in my credentials. I didn't vote. Okay. So I've been booted into Ubuntu, and it seems that the system information that I've put down wasn't high enough for it to compute the other screen that is necessary. So the other screen basically is a screen which tells us the load information and also other information which is about the computer. But at the moment it's just installed a generic 64-bit image by what is in the system. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through some of the code that is used in Linux. So we have code like sudo, and this is the root user code. So a lot of the install that we do is through the root user, and sudo is the root user. It's like the administrator of Windows. The administrator usually has the most control out of any of the users in the system, unless you're ranked higher, which is only like the like NT authority machines, that kind of thing, which is like a really high ranking user which has ultimate control. But that doesn't mean that you can't set the account. For example, you might have another user like me, DC. You can't set the account to sudo level. I'm fairly sure I'm saying that right, but it's just easier to say sudo or root user. So sudo apt, which means apt is like application, I think. Is it application? I'll put a link in that. I'll explain what that is in the description. Okay, so I'm going to say sudo apt-get update. So this just gets the updates from the internet. So now it's asking for my password. Invalid operation update. So udate. I've put udate. I should say update. There we go. And it's going to the internet, getting the packages. So it's done that already. Wow, this is really quick. And now the next code that I like to type in is upgrade. And this installs all the updates that we found. And does it want to continue? Yes. So it's just going to the internet, upgrading some of the packages that were there via the update. And it's working a lot quicker than what I was expecting, which is great. Now, on some versions of Linux, you might not have something called wget, which is called wget. That's, well, it's probably not the real name for it, but that's how I refer to it, because it's basically getting a package from the internet and downloading it onto your server. So what I mean by that is, like, you're going to, let's say, SourceForge. In this case, we're going to go to SourceForge and download a package called fog_0.32 tar.gz. And that's the package which we're going to use in Linux to install fog. So, what I would recommend, if you don't have it already, is to do sudo apt-get install wget, and as you can see, I already have it. But on some versions of Linux, you might not have that. If you have something like Fedora, then it could be, I think it's yum apt-get install. I'm not very sure on that. I'm using Ubuntu, but if you're using a different version of Linux, the syntax is different as well in some versions. So like in Fedora, you have yum, which is, I think, like a root user. I'm not really sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's what this channel's for, so yeah. Okay, so the next thing that we do is wget and then type in the header reference. So in this case it's http ://sourceforge .net /projects /freeghosts freeghost -files /fog _0.32 /fog _0.32.tar.gz. Okay, now that's going to go to SourceForge and download our fog package. This shouldn't take very long depending on your internet connection speed. Okay, so what we've just done is that we've gone to SourceForge, downloaded the file, and now that's saved onto our hard disk. The file is a gzip file, which is similar to a WinZip file. However, gzip file is specific to Linux. Although there may be some other programs in Windows which can extract gzip files, but as far as I know, it's limited to Linux at the moment. So yeah, because the files in a gzip file are made for Linux. So the next thing to do is extract the file, which is tar-xzf fog _0.32.tar.gz. And as you can see, that's extracted the file. So now if I list the file by pressing ls, which is list, this is the same as dir in CMD. Then you will have two files. One is the directory, one is the actual file itself. So in this case, the directory is fog _0.32, and the file is fog _0.32.tar.gz. So now we're going to change the directory, which is what CD stands for. I'm going to call it fog _0.32. And as you can see, the directory has been changed to fog _0.32 with a $. ls, okay, yeah, ls. And as you can see, there is a lot of files in there. So now this is like going into, this is the directory. Yes, okay. So this, now, the command that I've run is the directory in which these files are stored. So they're inside the fog _0.32 folder. However, inside that folder is all these files, as you can see. So now I'm going to cd bin, change the directory to bin, and as you can see, there is a folder called bin, which is highlighted in blue on the left, just above the changelog.txt, if it's a little hard to read. So now I'm going to change that directory, and we're in that directory just now. And I'm going to run the code sudo and I'm going to run the previous code that was there. So to run the previous code, just press the up arrow and you'll get that code back again, the installfog.sh. Press enter and we're into fog now. For this installation I'm going to run the DNS and DHCP on a Windows Server 2008 machine. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to use, what am I going to do? Pure IIS? Yeah, I'm going to duplicate this machine. So clone it, and I'm going to say clone, and then I'm going to say next, full clone. I'm going to wait for that to clone, and while that clones I'm going to go back, and we are using Ubuntu, so this is 2. However, if you're using Fedora or CentOS, then just choose 1 like that. But in this case we're using 2, so I'm just going to say 2. Let's see, what type of installation would you like to do? We're doing a normal server. This isn't a storage node. So this is a normal server. Press S if you're doing a storage node. So N. Yes, that is the IP address. Let's set up a router address for DHCP. No, because that's being routed through Windows Server 2008. DNS address, again, Windows Server 2008. Don't need to change the default network interface, but if you do have a different network interface, then select yes. This is no for us. Would you like to use Fog Server for Dhcp Services? No, because that's being routed through Windows Server 2008. So let's see if that's comes ready. 11 minutes. Okay, welcome back. The image has now been cloned, so I'm going to start up that virtual machine, but first I'm going to check the base memory and processors. So at the moment I think it was 6 gigs that we gave to that computer, so I'm going to just ramp it down slightly, get around 5 gigs. Processors was something like 4, was it 4 processors? Let's just have a look. Yeah, 4 processors, 6 gigs of RAM. So I'm gonna go to the IIS clone, settings, and give this one 4 processors. Okay, and I'm just going to start this machine, and then I'll show you DHCP, how to configure it on Windows Server 2008. Okay, I'm just going to switch back to Fog and then just show you what it's on about. So, on Fog, what it's saying is DHCP needs to be set up in order for it to PXE like onto other computers. So that means it will look for a network, an NIC. Yeah, it will basically look for a network interface card, and it will attempt to boot an image into that computer. Exactly the same as we did back in WDS when we were setting that up. You might recall that I had another virtual machine, and the machine was booting directly off the network from the server. Now this is essentially the same thing. This is what's going to happen. But unfortunately, I haven't reached the stage in which I can do that on Fog just yet, so that's going to be for a future tutorial. Now at the moment I'm just going to show you how to configure and install Fog. So just going to wait for Server 2008 to load. Yep, so just going to go administrator. I'm going to go to, what am I going to do? Oh yes, I'm going to go to Server Manager, so that's that little thing down there, or go to the Start menu and type in Server, and then you'll get Server Manager. Start that, and then just click on Add Roles, Next, dhcp server, install dhcp anyway, next, oh, parent domain, okay, so we need a domain controller first, so let's go and configure the domain controller. Very easy to do. Next, Active Directory domain services, next, install. This is also covered in the Windows Deployment Services lecture, which I did. Parts 1 and 2, I believe. Just gonna wait for that to install. 2:46 in the morning. Close, and then click on Active Directory Domain Services. Run Active Directory Domain Service Installation Wizard. Click next, New Forest, next. Let's call this cloud3.com. Windows Server 2008 R2, next. DNS server, that's fine, next. This computer will use an IP address. Yeah, then just click yes. Delegation for the server cannot be created because it cannot be found or it does not run DNS server if you are integrating an existing DNS structure. Okay, clicked yes. I do want to continue. Next. Type in the password. Okay, so I'm just going to type in a bit more complex password. Next. Okay, then click finish. Restart. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in, and as you can see, the server is now a domain server, so that means that any other computer that joins to it will join to the domain of the server. That's if you want that to happen. That will be covered in a later tutorial once I have a proper working server. At the moment this is just virtual, so it's not real kind of thing, it's just in the cloud kind of. Okay, now what we need to do is go back to add roles, next, and then click on Dhcp Services. Click install Dhcp server anyway, and then next, and as you can see the parent domain has come back now, so we got rid of that error. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is this address right here. This is also known as the local loopback address. So 127.0.01 is a loopback address, so that means it goes back to your original machine. So it's like going round and roundabout, but going back to the same point. That's pretty much what it is, but all the other computers that connect to the Dhcp server will see the server as a local server. So what it is saying in this case, so when we're setting it up here, is that 127.0.01 is the same as saying local, because all it means is that the Dhcp server will be installed on, the Dhcp service will be installed on this server. That's what it means. Okay, so then when we click validate, it's valid. So let's click next. Wins is not required. Dhcp scope. Okay, so the Dhcp scope is the starting and ending addresses that we can give. It's a range that we can give to computers that are connected to the network. So our scope name is just going to be, let's call it fog. Starting address can be 192.168.0. Let's call it 16, and the ending can be, okay, so I've got one at 20, so I'm going to call it 192.168.0.19. So within this range, I can only boot up 3 machines. So 3 machines will only have a separate IP address. That's what it means. So I can't really do a multicast session with this kind of IP range. So ideally, what I would do is that I would have, actually I'm going to call that starting IP address 20, and I can call this something like 100. So that gives me 80 machines that I can boot up at the same time, if it's possible. I'm going to click then make sure that activate the scope is ticked, and then you have a wide subnet type, as that will help with both speed and you have a longer lease space. You have a longer lease. So don't need a default gateway, that's configured automatically. So click OK. Next. Don't need DHCP v6 because our server doesn't work like that, because we don't have IPv6. So click Next. Use the current credentials, and then let's just install it. Okay, so DHCP has been installed. So now the next part of the installation process of Fog is to go to Start menu and then type in DHCP, and you'll notice that the program's up, and then just click into it, IPv4, scope options, and then you want to configure these 2 options. So in Fog, I'm just going to wake them up, it's 066 and 067. So those are the 2 options that need to be on the Server 2008 one. So now what we need to do is just go left click, configure options, and scroll down to 066. Here we go, 066, 067. And for the string value, so for 066, the server host, it's the IP address. So the string value in this case is 016. So it's 192.168.0.16. For the boot file name, that's pxe_linux.0. Okay, click apply and OK. And as you can see, the 2 options are listed there. So now we can continue the installation of Fog. So what would we like to do? Install the additional language packs? Nope. Okay, we'd like to continue with the installation? Yes. And I will install all the packages that are necessary from the internet to make Fog work. It's a little bit longer as we didn't install one of the preset packs that came with Linux, but never mind. It installs anyway. So I will see you when this is done. Okay, so now we have a message saying that MySQL is going to be installed and that we need to configure it. So now all we need to do is press enter, and it will get and download what it needs to get. Okay, so now it's telling us that we need a password, so just type in the password. So for this one I'm going to type in test. Okay, test. Okay, and it's just going to set up MySQL now. Okay, so now it's telling us whether or not we want to send notifications back to Fog. I'm going to tell them no, so we don't need it. And now, as you can see, we have access to the Fog management console. Now, look what happens when we do it now. So I can just literally get, as this is a bridge network connection, I can go to a physical machine, and I'm just going to type in the address. And as you can see, we get an error saying unable to connect to database. Now this is because we haven't configured the MySQL config file. I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. Okay, what we need to do now is type in a code called sudo vim space var www-fog-commons-config.php. Alright? Also, bear in mind that there are spaces here, so watch out for them. Okay, now it's prompting me for the password. And here we need to navigate down to line 5328. So that's 5328, which is here. Then press the insert key and type the password. In this case, this was test. Then press escape and then type :WQ, and that writes it straight back to the config file. So now when we go back again, just reload it, we get the interface screen. See? Because we configured the database file, and in doing so we've got access to the actual file. It's not that the file wasn't working, it was working. The problem was the file had not been configured, so we didn't gain access towards the file, and hence we couldn't gain access to the index.php file. So now all we need to do is install upgrade, and as you can see, we have access to Fog. Now the default username and password of Fog is username Fog, and the password is password. Now if we log in, as you can see, you have a whole list of tools available to you, including imaging that's been done over the last 30 days, the bandwidth, we can save the password, home, which is just home, user management, where we can create another user, host management, I have no real idea what this is, but it looks really good. Group management just seems to be you're managing a group of computers, so that seems to be for multiple images. So host management, I guess, is just a single image then. Image management, so this is where we can find where the images are and what the images are doing and all that kind of good stuff. Storage management, where the images are going to go, I'm assuming. Also, you see, we have storage nodes, storage group, so if we have multiple Fog servers, then we can say storage node. Snap-in management, no idea what that is, but looks good. Printer management for printers. Fog configuration, if you need to change anything. Task management, what's going on at the current moment. Reports, what's happening at the moment. Then we have other information, and then we can log out. Just like that, see? So, I hope you learned something today. And yeah, that's Fog, the open source computer cloning solution. Thank you for joining me on this tutorial. I hope to see you again soon. This has been Multi-Tech-Spec, and yeah, thanks. Okay, one more thing that I wanted to mention in Linux is that you can shut down the actual server, so just type in shutdown. I'm going to type in --help, and as you can see, we get a lot of things. So I'm going to type in shutdown, and now the time expected to shut down is shut down at, what's the time just now? 11:09. Okay, so 11:10. So oh, need to be root user. Okay, so sudo shutdown, and let's call it 11:10, and it's going to shut down just now. So now it's going to be sudo, and I think the command is power off, and that will power off all the remaining systems. There you go, see? So now that shuts it down, and it's safe as well. So that's how you shut down Ubuntu.